All right, today what I'm gonna do is make 3 dishes using a technique that I call phasing. If you're curious about what phasing is, click the link below. Click right here to watch a brief video on what it is. But one of my favorite things to do is to bring the pub to the house. Whether it's a big game to watch or friends and family are just coming over to have a good time, what better way to share good times with them than to create some great food that goes with great beer. So the 3 things that I'll be making today, first is an avocado hummus, which is great for dipping. We're gonna do some beer brats, use the grill a little bit, and then we're gonna finish up with a pork belly kimchi poutine, which is one of my favorite things to eat with a great beer. So let's get started.
So again, in preparing this, we're gonna have to gear up with the equipment we'll need to do these 3 great dishes. You'll need a cutting board, a sharp knife, and measuring cups and spoons, a lemon juicer, a funnel, and I like this one because it's got a strainer that goes in the middle of it. Very, very handy. 2 plastic squeeze bottles, a food processor, a slotted spoon, 2 serving bowls, a large plate, a medium frying pan, splatter guard. You're also gonna need 2 deep pots, a cast iron skillet, a must-have in any kitchen, a drying rack, a high heat-resistant thermometer, a spatula, and I really love these restaurant-style spatulas. They work really well in a lot of different uses. Tongs, a fine mesh spoon, stainless steel prep bowls, and beer mugs for as many guests as you have.
Now on to phase 1, the avocado hummus and the sauces. I recommend you start this early in the day of your meal.
In the first part of this phase, we're going to start by making the avocado hummus. So I'm going to start with 2 to 3 cloves of garlic. We're just going to crush those and make them into a paste using some kosher salt. If you watch Bobby Flay, you'll know that he likes using this kosher salt as an abrasive on the garlic. Now what I really like about this hummus is that everything goes into the food processor. Next up, we're gonna need 2 avocados. What I like doing is slicing it right down the middle, opening it up, just take the knife and stab it in, and the seed comes right out. Now I'm just gonna use a spoon and scoop this out right into the food processor. At this point, just gonna add a 15-ounce can of chickpeas or garbanzo beans into the food processor. We need the juice of 1.5 limes. Next, we need a teaspoon of cumin, some salt and pepper. Now this is totally optional, but I like my food a little bit spicy. If you want to spice this avocado hummus up a little bit, add 1 jalapeno. Now, with all the ingredients in the food processor, let's give it a whirl. Now as it's starting to blend up a little bit, I'm gonna add 1 tablespoon of olive oil and drizzle that in as it's processing. Use a spoon to scrape the sides down. Give it another whirl, and it's done. Let's transfer this to a serving bowl. And we just cover with saran wrap and refrigerate. Now we're gonna make a chipotle sriracha mayo. One of my favorite condiments that you can put on any kind of food, but go really well with the pork belly kimchi poutine that we're gonna make today. And all it takes is 5 ingredients. 1/2 cup of mayo, 2 chipotle peppers, and a little bit of the adobo sauce. Teaspoon of sriracha, 2 teaspoons of hoisin sauce. This actually adds a really nice sweetness to the sauce. And a tablespoon of honey. This is really important to balance out the heat. Ingredients are in, let's give it a whirl. Once that's complete, I'm gonna use my funnel that's got this nice little filter on it, and I'm just gonna transfer the chipotle mayo into the plastic squeeze bottle. Chipotle sriracha mayo. Really good stuff. All right, the last part of Phase 1 is to make a little bit of sour cream. Sour cream by itself can be a little thick if you want to drizzle it over the poutine. So what I'm gonna do is add just a tad bit of milk to thin it out. Plastic squeeze bottle, funnel, same drill. Sour cream sauce.
Next up, Phase 2. We're going to complete the pork belly kimchi stir fry and prep the corn cheese. I recommend you do this about 2 hours before your meal.
Now in Phase 2, the big thing we want to accomplish is to get this pork belly kimchi stir fry finished. So you start with about 8 to 10 ounces of pork belly. I get this at the local Costco. They'll cut it up for you in the right size if you want. I'm gonna slice this up into 1-inch cubes. Season this with salt and pepper, and that's ready to go. Next up, let's mince a couple of cloves of garlic. Now you're gonna need about 8 ounces of kimchi, preferably a little bit aged, so it's got a darker red color. It just adds more flavor. When you buy this at the local supermarket, sometimes it's already chopped, but if it's not, you're gonna have to rough chop it into bite-sized pieces. All right, let's do some cooking. Start by heating a frying pan to medium heat. Next, we're gonna add the pork belly chunks that we cut up earlier. Let's just let those brown up for a little bit. Now that these are crisped up, I'm going to reduce the heat a little bit and use a slotted spoon to take the pork belly out. Now with the heat reduced to low, I'm going to add the garlic that we minced earlier and just let it toast for about 1.5 minutes. Now we don't want it to brown too much, so at this point I'm going to add the kimchi that we sliced up earlier. We're gonna let this saute in the pan for a couple minutes just to develop some flavors before we add the final ingredients. You're gonna start to see the color turn a darker red, and that's exactly what you wanna see. It's been a couple minutes now, so I'm gonna add just a tablespoon of sesame oil to add a little bit of flavor. This is the perfect time to add the pork belly back. And the last thing we're gonna do is add 1 tablespoon of chili paste. This is sambal oelek. Not sure how to pronounce that, but it's going in. And that's done. You can really see the beautiful color that the pork belly and the kimchi have achieved at this point. If you're worried about the heat level, don't add the chili paste at the end. And also remember, the sour cream, the mayo, there's balancing elements in the poutine to chill out the heat a little bit. Now in this second part of Phase 2, we're just gonna prep the corn that's also gonna go on the poutine. Real simple, just 1 can of corn, 1/3 cup of mayonnaise, pinch of thyme, about 8 ounces of shredded mozzarella, and a couple ounces of shredded cheddar. And that's done. Just cover with saran wrap and refrigerate. One last thing, put these mugs in the freezer so they're nice and frosty by the time you eat.
It's time for Phase 3. We're starting the brats and hitting the grill. I recommend you start this an hour before your meal.
Now in this phase, we're gonna start the brats as well as work a little bit on the grill. First, I'm gonna take 2 onions. Now I like it leaving this end of the onion on because that makes it a lot easier to cut and slice. Now we're also going to prep some peppers for the grill. I've got 2 serranos here. If you don't want that much kick, use jalapenos. A yellow bell pepper, a red bell pepper, and a green bell pepper. Just going to drizzle these with a little bit of canola oil and season with salt and pepper. These are ready for the grill, but before we go out there, let's get the onions started for the beer brat stew. Now we're gonna get the onions going. We're just gonna melt some butter over medium-low heat. Now that the butter's melted, I'm gonna add the onions. And we're gonna let these cook in the butter until they're nice, soft, and translucent. One quick note, if you're not using salted butter, you may want to add a pinch of salt just to add a layer of flavor. With this type of pot, you want to constantly stir the onions. The reason is, if you don't, the bottom ones will get too brown and the ones at the top won't. It's been about 10 minutes now, and you're gonna see that the onions have gotten real soft. You can see at this point that most of the onions are softened and they've become translucent. So I'm gonna shut the heat off for a little bit and let's head out to the grill.
These are some brats that I picked up from the local market. They make these brats. If you have access to these, great. If not, the prepackaged ones will work just fine. Let's take these out along with the peppers to the grill and fire them up. Here we are at the grill, and I've got it heated to about medium high. We're gonna start by charring these peppers on all sides. Now it's time to put the brats on the grill as well. All we want to do is achieve some grill marks on them, some sear marks on them. We don't need to worry about cooking them all the way through because they're going to go in the beer bath later on. You're going to start to see the peppers blister and char. That's exactly what you want to see. Make sure you rotate them around so they get charred and blistered all the way around. Now that we've got these beautiful grill marks, I'm going to take these brats off the heat. Now let's finish up these peppers.
Okay, we're back in the house, and the first thing I'm gonna do is cover these grilled peppers with some saran wrap, just for about 15 minutes or so. Now what I'm doing is, to the onions that have reduced, I'm adding 4 bottles of beer. I prefer a dark lager. This is called a Bock beer, which is typically a more dark lager, and it adds great flavor. This is the bath that I'm gonna put the brats in, as well as the grilled peppers. We're gonna let the brats and the peppers sit in this bath until we're ready to eat. So the peppers have been covered in saran wrap for about 15 minutes now. I'm gonna remove them, remove the seeds, and then I'm gonna slice them into strips. Now for these serranos, if you don't want the heat, you definitely want to remove the seeds from these. Okay, just take these sliced peppers, beautifully roasted. We're gonna throw them right into the beer bath and the brats.
One last step in this phase, preheat that oven to 400 degrees. It's the final phase. We're gonna finish up the corn cheese and make some fries. I recommend you start this 20 minutes before your meal.
Okay, we're in the final phase, and the first step is to heat some vegetable oil, about half a quart. While this oil is heating up, we're gonna start by taking that corn cheese mixture that we had and layering it into a skillet. Right before you do that, add 2 teaspoons of sugar just to give it a little bit of sweetness and help it caramelize a little bit. Now it's time to put this in the preheated oven at 400 degrees. You're gonna put it in there for about 10 to 15 minutes or until the edges start to brown and the cheese starts to bubble. You can see that the oil has now hit a temperature of 375. So at this point, what I'm gonna do is I've got some frozen fries. You want to fry these until these are nice and golden brown. Another key here is to use a thicker French fry because we're putting a lot of stuff on it to make the poutine. The meatier the fry, the better. Okay, we're finishing up the last batch of fries. Fries are done, and here's that beautiful corn cheese right out of the oven. This phase is done.
And it's showtime. Let's get this food plated and eat up.
So I've got my avocado hummus here. I'm gonna start by drizzling a little bit of olive oil right in the middle. Next, a few pine nuts. And to finish with some paprika. Serve these with some pita chips and you are good to go. Now for the pork belly kimchi poutine, let's start with the fries. Next, we're gonna take that beautiful corn cheese and take this out and put it on 1/2 of these fries. Now that beautiful kimchi pork belly. Some chipotle mayo and some sour cream from phase 1. Some cilantro, and you're good to go. Last and definitely not least, the brats, a couple of toasted buns. Grab 2 of these beautiful bratwursts, amazing grill marks. Top it with some of the onions and peppers. Some sauerkraut. Don't forget your frosted mugs. And let's eat. And cheers. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.